Drip Gaming. I'm the Archmaster. I'm so glad you dropped by. Today we're doing more world building ideas, I really like this one. There are plenty of ideas that are fantastic and cool, but this one is it's one of my favorites. Of course, I have like a million favorites, but anyway. So this is a bigger idea. It has multiple children, but it's that what you can see of the world is largely determined by your size. If you're a medium creature, you see a certain thing. If you're a small creature, you see something else. If you're a large creature, you see something else, right? Of course, there's a certain basic level of reality that we all see, that we all share. There's the ground, those are some trees, that's the sky, right? We all see a lot of that. But you see more or less based on your size. So, I was playing It Takes Two. It's a fun game. I think I've already told the story, so I'm not going to take super long with it. But we were, you play as a toy, right? And so we were climbing a tree. We're going on the tree branches and whatnot, and we're seeing like carved ways and like a door in the side, and we're like, this wasn't here before. A tiny door. We open it up, and we see the squirrels that you saw in the previous part of the game. When you were adults, you're looking around, you see the squirrels in the tree. But now that you're a toy, the squirrel has like a gun and a hard hat, and he talks to you. It's like, hold on, just by shrinking in size, I see a whole new world. And I thought, that's the plane of fairy in my world. It's there all around us. It's everywhere. Medium creatures can't see it. Children can see it because they're small, which is why children actually can cross into the plane of fairy and get taken by fairies and talk to fairies and whatnot. Oh, the monster under your bed? That's something that they can see that's actually there. You look under the bed and you can't because you're too big. Just size itself changes what you can see. And so gnomes, who are small creatures, they are kind of halfway. They can see the trees and whatnot, and they can also see the fairies and the pixies and the talking squirrels, and that's why they have that woodland affinity, and a lot of them are druids and mages and whatnot. Yeah, they can see the human and whatnot, and maybe they don't really grasp like the grandeur of all the tallest towers. It kind of just fades into cloud for them, so they can't really see everything in the medium world, but they're kind of halfway between. But yeah, you move on from that, and you say, well, what happens to, large creatures, huge creatures, gargantuan? That's where you get to giants. This is one of my favorite applications of this idea. So, giants, from their perspective, of course, they don't see the plane of fairy at all, right? Humans, medium-sized, they don't see it. Giants definitely don't. But giants may not see so much the lands of men, their houses, their buildings, their forests. The giants may have a different view of the world entirely. They may just see, elements and like whose kingdom is whose, and they may see the ancient footprints and battlegrounds of ages past, and that's their vision, and that's what they see. And so when a giant is, stomping through your forest or your town, he may look over and see, rocks and pebbles. Only if he got real close and brought his head down, would the vision start to change, and he'd start to see houses and people and stuff. But as he's just walking up by, he may not even be aware that humans exist. And when humans do something like burn down a forest, the giant sees it as, oh, wildfire. When humans are chopping down a forest, the giant's like, oh, termites got in there and ate all the trees. They all fell down. They're all dead, huh? Like the way they view the world is different because they're larger. But here's another cool thing. There's tons of stuff you can do with that he doesn't see you. But what if the medium creatures don't see the large ones either? A medium creature, you don't see the small things, but you don't see the large ones either. What if humans aren't even aware that giants exist? What if, so in my world, I have, neutral giants that aren't tied to any element, but I have those that are, right? So, and I'm sure y'all are more familiar with elemental giants, so let's start there. Let's say you have a fire giant, a storm giant, right? He's, adherent to storms, right? He has that connection. He has, lightning and whatnot in his blood and all that. And so from his perspective, he sees a world, and he's walking along in the forest and the mountains of the trees. He's doing his thing. And he goes over and sees, little cliff, little outcropping, and he just kind of sits on it. He has a staff or something. He's just like, huh. Humans, though, they see a storm front coming in. And it's rain, and instead of footprints, it's the rain and the wind that's knocking the forests around and breaking trees and whatnot. And the storm moves over and just settles over a rocky outcropping, a little cliff, and it just rains over there. And so the humans are like, oh, look, storms. And yeah, that's not how storms work in our world. It's how storms work in my world. They can move around. The weather is actually fantastic. You won't be bored when you're playing a game in my world, because the world is actually fantastic. It's stuff that you haven't seen. Don't rely on your expectations of reality, because it's not the same in my world. Anyway, so yeah, the people view that as normal. But what if there was like some magic spell or magic stone you could look through, and you can see giants now, right? So you see this storm coming, and the mage just figured out that he can do this, or like the mage figured it out, dropped the stone somewhere, and a peasant picked it up. So the peasant sees the storm, and it settles on the ridge, and maybe he actually thinks that is odd. And he's like, yes, just on the ridge. So he looks through the stone, and he just sees this storm giant just sitting there on the ridge, just looking down. And he's like, what the, what? And he like drops it in the mud, and he picks it up, and he's like, oh my god, there's a giant over there. It's like, it can absolutely freak him out. Like the idea that, what if that was how giants were discovered? That someone created some stone so you can actually see larger things than you, and maybe that, we have, I watched Spiderwick Chronicles, right? Where, you had to look through a certain stone to see, fae, smaller creatures and whatnot. Maybe there's a stone to see larger creatures, right? So, like, imagine discovering giants and be like, that's not a storm, guys, that's a being, and the storm falls, and what the heck? Like, a wildfire is actually a giant? It's like, like the wave, the tsunami, the flood, it's like, that's a person. That's a giant walking around, and where his feet step, he's dripping water, but we just see the floods coming in from the ocean, right? We see different versions of reality based on our size. There's so, like, a hurricane, a tornado can be, this flying giant that's moving around and stuff like that. The amount of, like, the first contact, what would that even look like, right? It's just so cool. Like, those are giants in my world. That's how the world works. It's fantastic. And yeah, you can play in my world. You can buy it, buy one of my setting books that, Lord willing, one day I'll release. You can buy it and be like, yeah, the game takes place in a time when the giants are already known, and everyone has, special vaccine, and they can all see giants from birth. Okay, you can ignore that part. Absolutely fine. You can play it like it's Forgotten Realms, and nothing's stopping you, right? But it's there if you want it, right? It's an extra thing where you're like, actually, there was this one giant that never got discovered, and he's still, like, that volcano over there is actually him sleeping, right? And we see a volcano, and it's actually a giant. And when the volcano erupts, the giant is, getting up and yelling and stretching and stuff. And when what we see is like a flow of lava is actually the giant walking, right? There's so many cool things. But anyway, I don't think that was it. Oh yeah, there's more. Thank you God. So communication, right? We get to the point, first contact. Well, I think if there's a larger and a smaller creature and they can't see each other, why would they be able to really interact with each other either? At least not in a direct way. Why would they be able to talk to each other, right? They're seeing, touching, talking. Maybe each of those requires a different, vaccine, a different thing to make it happen, right? So what if you have the big, super tall, 100-foot tall storm giants and whatnot, okay? Humans finally discover them. They're like, guys, the weather is actually beings. We have to talk to them and ask them to stop raining on us all the time, etc. Tell the volcano to stop erupting, So they say, we need to make first contact. They go up to the giants, and they're like, hey, giants, we can finally see you. And maybe they find some way to make the giants see them. I don't know. That's where the enlarge or reduce spell comes in. If you want to go to the Fey Dream, cast the reduce spell on yourself. Sorry, I gave away something. If you want to go to the Plane of Fairy, cast the reduce spell on yourself, and now you're small, now you can see it, right? Cast enlarge, and now you can see giants and see other things that people can see, right? Make spells actually interesting, not just, oh, you're big. It's like, no, you're big, and now you can see another plane of existence layered on top of your own. That's cooler. Anyway. So yeah, they try talking to the giant, and the giant's voice box is so big, if you want a scientific explanation, it's so big, and it creates such a deep tone that human ears can't hear it. There are sounds that dogs can hear that we can't because it's too high. There are sounds that are too low that we can't hear. Giants are so big, their voice box is so large, they speak so deeply, their mouth just moves, and you hear nothing. And so you need to have an intermediary translator. So you get something like a hill giant or a smaller giant or an ogre or something. The ogre is the right size. He's big enough to see you and talk to you, and big enough to see the other guy. So you can tell him, hey, ogre or hill giant, tell him this. And the hill giant does his best to translate. This can have a bit of world building stuff where this is why people thought that all giants were idiots, because it's a hill giant that's translating, and hill giants are stupid, or ogres or whoever. And so they're like, oh yeah, Big Giant said, go east and eat rocks. It's like, oh, Big Giant's an idiot. It's like, no, the Hill Giant translator is an idiot. The Big Giant's a philosopher, right? So you can have all these misconceptions. You can all have all sorts of cool stuff. But yeah, like like there's world building you can do. There's actual gameplay you can do. What if there's a storm? What if not every storm is a giant? What if some are, right? What if all the different types of weather could be giant, could be not, or could be anything. Could be an elemental. You can play with this idea and have some really interesting world building. Some plots and like plots of enemies, cool adventure scenarios where like, all right, some dude, harnessed a giant. He's like riding him and with a bit and bridle, and he's steering him around. He's some mage or some sorcerer or who knows what. You can say that someone, the first person who discovered that the weather is actually giants wanted to destroy a rival nation, and so they took the giant's favorite toy or their favorite food and they put it in that place, and so the giant beelines straight there and just sits there and rains on everyone, or blistering heat or snow or whatever. He just lets his weather hit them, and they're like, we're cursed. It's been 6 months and we've had nothing but rain. And they have to find. Let's talk about the adventure. Talk about the world building where you're like, hey players, so this just happened. The storm just went over and sat there for this long, or you're aware that a mage dropped in a day ago and now the king's asking for your help, or like there's so much stuff you can do with an idea like this, right? Anyway, that's all. I have a Patreon in description. I'll get a Discord up and running one day once I have actually a large enough community that we'll have enough people to talk. But yeah, like and subscribe. YouTube pleasantries go a long way. Feed the algorithm, please, and God bless.